We continue with the interpretation of Bent Flyvbjerg's How Big Things Get Done. This is the second part of the interpretation. In the previous section, we discussed the primary reason for the failure of large projects. Thinking fast, acting slow. Decisions made hastily without proper planning lead to blind actions, causing delays and subsequent problems. Flyvbjerg suggests the solution is to think slow, act fast, emphasizing the importance of thorough planning before execution. The concept is straightforward, but why do people often fail to implement it? For significant undertakings, frequent shortcomings might not stem from a lack of understanding, but rather from unavoidable reasons. Flyvbjerg identifies 3 situations where planning tends to fail, shedding light on why handling major projects is exceptionally challenging. Understanding these scenarios provides new insights into both decision-making and planning. Let's first dissect an English word, commit, with its noun form being commitment. Although commonly used, it lacks a precise translation in Chinese. Commit emphasizes an action that is difficult to reverse, much like making a move in chess, implying a commitment without regret. For example, in a romantic relationship, breaking up and getting back together repeatedly is acceptable. However, marriage is a commitment. Once the certificate is obtained, reversing the decision becomes challenging. Flyvbjerg argues that the fundamental reason for the failure of significant projects is hasty commitment. Consider an impulsive marriage where the couple didn't think thoroughly before obtaining the marriage certificate. Over time, realizing the relationship isn't ideal, divorce becomes a complicated process. With the addition of children, divorce transitions from a cost issue to a matter of emotional damage. As the years pass, and both parties age, continuing the current situation seems inevitable. The initial commitment leads to subsequent commitments, escalating the situation. This phenomenon is known as commitment escalation or lock-in. Once committed, it becomes challenging to disengage from the vortex. Most projects veering towards disaster follow this pattern. It's not because people desire this outcome or are unaware it's unfavorable. Rather, they find themselves with no alternative. Flyvbjerg terms this error the commitment fallacy. Being cautious when making commitments is essential. However, why do people rush into commitments? There are roughly 3 reasons. The first is overconfidence and blind optimism. From a psychological perspective, a theory championed by Daniel Kahneman, supported by substantial empirical evidence. Blind optimism often leads people to underestimate the time required to complete tasks. Even when individuals acknowledge their tendency to underestimate, they continue the habit. This psychological phenomenon, humorously termed Hofstadter's Law by science writer Douglas Hofstadter, suggests that incorporating the awareness of underestimation doesn't prevent it. Additionally, individuals prefer not to reference past experiences when contemplating the future. Even with reminders that past experiences indicate potential failure, people tend to believe their current situation is different. Optimism is natural, and it is the foundation for embarking on large projects. However, Flyvbjerg suggests that, while frontline workers can afford optimism, decision-makers must exercise extreme caution. As he puts it, the flight attendant should be optimistic, not the pilot. Pilots cannot afford to say, "I estimate this much fuel should be enough," as caution is paramount. Nevertheless, Kahneman's psychological patterns may seem more applicable to minor matters. Are extensive justifications not mandatory for major projects? The second cause of the commitment fallacy is strategic misdirection. Imagine being a newly appointed minister in a government department, eager to establish prestige with a major project. A seemingly fantastic project is proposed, requiring a considerable budget that isn't directly from your pocket. Would you honestly report the accurate cost to the parliament? Politicians strategically underreport budgets to secure approval. Once approved, immediate implementation begins, with initial funds spent. After some time, additional budget requests are made, and the parliament has little choice but to allocate more funds. While the concept of sunk costs dictates that money spent should not guide future decisions, politics often deviates from rationality. With a significant investment already made, stakeholders are reluctant to admit failure. The logical choice is to push through the project despite challenges. The third reason leading to planning failures is lack of clarity and purpose, a mistake that can result in catastrophe. Consider a true story about a couple in New York, David and Deborah, residing in a 19th-century townhouse. In 2011, they decided to renovate their kitchen. Their hired architect suggested knocking down the wall between the kitchen and a small room, doubling the kitchen's size, with an estimated cost of $170,000, and completion in 3 months. Given the expensive nature of New York, the couple agreed. During construction, it was discovered that the floor between the kitchen and the basement was too old, and needed additional support with steel beams, requiring floor removal. Seizing the opportunity, the couple decided to replace all the floors. This snowballed into renovating the fireplace in the living room, and the unattractive first-floor bathroom. The architect had to redraw plans multiple times, dealing with legal permits for each change, resulting in a complete reconstruction of the entire first floor. Eventually, David's mother suggested renovating the second-floor bathroom, since the first floor looked great. The couple agreed, leading to further redesigns and legal applications. The cascading effect of changes increased the total budget from $170,000 to $800,000, and the project took 18 months. Had they thought through the project's purpose initially, the same result could have been achieved, without spending as much money or time. This incremental commitment strategy, or add-on tactics, is a common pitfall in significant endeavors. Flyvbjerg believes that the fundamental problem for the New York couple was not clarifying the purpose of the project from the beginning. People often confuse purpose with means. Renovating the kitchen is not the purpose. If you're living comfortably, why renovate the kitchen? Is it because you want to cook more frequently, or do you often entertain guests, wanting to enhance their experience? If it's about hosting guests, you shouldn't only consider the kitchen. You should plan to reconstruct the entire first floor from the beginning. And that would involve a different budget. Planning ahead would save money, compared to realizing it later. If you can accept the cost, it's better to think it through from the start. If not, leave the kitchen untouched initially. Flyvbjerg advocates for beginning with the end when devising plans. You need to first determine the purpose of the project. When a politician proposes building a bridge to connect an island and the mainland, the first question should be, what is the purpose of the bridge? Is it to boost tourism on the island, or to shorten commuting time for the residents? How many people need to commute? Is the island's tourism limited due to transportation constraints? It's common to find situations where building a bridge doesn't contribute to the island's economic development. Sometimes, due to policy reasons, the costly bridge sees minimal use. Entrepreneurs often talk about beginning with the end, but they can't resist the urge to prioritize means over ends. In 2000, Apple introduced a new computer called the Power Mac G4 Cube. A transparent cube that responded to hand gestures for commands. While innovative and very Apple-esque, the market response was dismal. Interestingly, in 1997, Steve Jobs emphasized starting with the customer experience, working backward to technology, rather than starting with the technology and figuring out how to sell it. However, Jobs himself fell into this trap. Amazon founder Jeff Bezos also made a similar mistake. While advocating for starting new products and services, by writing the product's press release and user manual first, gaining internal approval, then proceeding with development, Bezos couldn't resist developing the Fire phone. Equipped with laser sensors that allowed gestures without touching the screen, the project ended in failure. Remember this. While technology exists, there may be no demand for operating devices through gestures. Renowned biographer Robert Caro, known for complex, lengthy biographies, adheres to a strict discipline. Each time he writes a book, he asks a crucial question. What is this book about? Caro writes 3 paragraphs, or even just one narrative theme, outlining the essential points the book aims to convey. He then strictly follows this structure during the writing process. As a writer, I understand how challenging it is to adhere to such discipline. The temptation to include interesting content unintentionally diluting the theme, extending the article, and diminishing its charm as constant. The New York couple's story has an interesting twist. After 18 months, David and Deborah finally moved into their renovated apartment. However, upon seeing the renovation, the neighbors upstairs decided to renovate their house as well and hired the same construction team. The neighbors faced similar consequences. Project took a full 2 years. The renovation noise disturbed David and Deborah so much that even boarding up the windows with plywood didn't help. Eventually, they had to stay with friends for a year. Just when the neighbors were close to completing their renovation, everyone realized the strain caused the entire building's exterior brick wall to weaken, requiring reconstruction. David and Deborah had to spend an additional $180,000 for this unexpected expense. Consider how many projects unfold similarly. A new leader, eager to make a mark, believes they must undertake significant initiatives. Subordinates, playing to their preferences, present an appealing project with an affordable budget, all well justified. The leader approves immediately, commit. Only during implementation do they realize the site selection was wrong, the location is inconvenient, and there's no economic benefit. The leader argues that economic considerations are not the sole criteria, prompting a budget increase. As the project nears obvious failure, the leader insists on success, escalating investment, and forcing acknowledgement of a successful project. While reading enlightens us on many principles, the failure of significant endeavors is typically not due to a lack of reading. This concludes this section. In the next part, we'll discuss the industrialization of creativity.
If you feel there is value in this, please like, subscribe to this channel, and leave your thoughts or suggestions in the comments section. Let's grow together and read more good books.